I hope you're hungry because you're listening to Everybody Eats.
What's up, everybody? We're back again with another episode of Everybody Eats. This is episode 9. Can't believe we're already at 9 episodes, but we have a really good episode here today. It's your host, Bensky Belazaire. We have co-host Edom Ekpe on the phone here again with Mr. Corey Orms B, gotta say the M. And we're here with a very special guest, Mr. Fredy Mullins. Woo! All right, so before we start, make sure that you're following us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're on there. So make sure that you're following, subscribe, and if you like the content, make sure to write and leave a review. Give us nice 5 stars, or just be honest, So definitely follow us. YouTube page is in the works. Hopefully by the time this drops, the page is up. If not, it's coming, I promise. All right, so we have a really good episode today. So we'll start with Mr. Fredy Mullins. So just introduce yourself. What do you do? Where are you from?
My name is Fredy Mullins. I work for a mutual fund company, and I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Woo!
Living out here in Virginia now.
Shout out to Brooklyn, that big UK. All right, so what brought you down to Virginia?
I actually ended up going to school down here. I went to college at UVA. Went back to New York to try and look for a job right after the dot-com bust. That did not work out well. So I ended up right back here. Ended up getting married with my college girlfriend, and I now have a son who's 16 years old and just down here working.
All right, yeah. All right. That's that black love. That's what I like.
It brings you back, bro.
Definitely. So I really enjoy having Fredy here. Him and I at work were always just chopping it up, having great conversations. So I thought, you know what, why not have him on the podcast? So a few weeks back, we had a really interesting conversation about ownership and the importance of ownership in your life, whether it's in music. It could be now we have the NCAA rule where students can now profit off their likeness. So that's something that we'll start talking about today. So starting with ownership, I guess we could talk about in the business field, coming from your perspective. We'll start, Mr. Ya Designs. You have your clothing line, you have your music studio. So how important would you say is ownership to yourself and to those industries?
Okay, ownership plays a big role in both of those categories, whether it's the clothing line or it's the music industry, right? Ownership, you talk about copyright, music, copyright infringement, stuff like that. You gotta, the thing about music is, or poetry or any form of art, once you create it, it's automatically copyrighted, right? So that's automatic ownership in music. With clothing line, it's kind of different. You're talking about patent, right? You're talking about your trademark right there. Like the Nike trademark, for example, out of the swoosh, that's trademark, right? So it's important to have that ownership because it builds the brand.
Okay.
So the ownership helps to build the brand. And we know how important brand building is because imagine if everyone could use the swoosh. Then everyone could wear Nike. You know what I mean? So ownership is a very big role in any brand building when it comes on to business.
So what are the logistics of trademarking and ownership and stuff like that? Can one of you speak on that?
You can probably speak to it better than I can.
When you say logistics, like what do you mean?
Like you say, you said it's a trademark, right? So what does that actually mean?
Okay, a trademark is basically, as it said, a mark for your trade, like your specific brand, your specific item, right? So whether it's the 3 lines from Adidas or the swoosh from Nike, right? Or the 2 G's from Gucci, that's your trademark. That's your brand. That's what, or it's the name.
Yeah.
You could patent the name and trademark the name. So that's your mark, as the name suggests, a trademark.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a mark for your trade or your specific product.
Definitely. So there's actually, like you mentioned, when it comes to clothes, there's a lot of like legal, and I believe there's legal processes to make sure that you do get it patented. So
yes.
I'm still learning, the specifics about that. about getting that patented. Do you know more about that?
I do not know very much about trademarking and patenting, honestly.
Okay.
I know a little bit about it, and I think probably more in terms of, I know that there are specific processes, documentations that you complete to have ownership and have that patent legally binding. The biggest part that I've always understood is having licensing and having other people providing others with authority to use that logo and that underwriting. It's all about ownership. I think in terms of the process, we need to be aware of the process, but I also think that historically, I don't know if we've done the best job of communicating that down generationally, making sure that younger people understand that process and understand the importance of it, and really the link back to generational wealth. I think that's really the emphasis that I normally have with it. It's always about, just like you were saying, you know, about branding and about building your brand and about building your name out here. But at the same time, it's about having that ownership, keeping that ownership within your family, within your grouping, and make sure you maintain that. Because there's wealth associated with that.
Yes.
And that's the important part to me.
Definitely. One thing that you brought up, you said generational wealth, and that's a word or a phrase that I've been hearing a lot lately, just listening to different podcasts, and just the more that I've been growing my business and seeing what I want to accomplish and what my goals are in life. So one big, I guess not necessarily aspect, or one big, what's the word I'm thinking of? Part of generational wealth is like real estate that I've heard, you know, being able to own your own piece of land, house, property. And I was listening to Earn Your Leisure this week, and they had, I forgot the name of the guest that they had, but essentially he said that, it was actually two brothers. They said that their mother told them that, quote, "You're not a man until you own the floors that you walk on." And that hit, you know, that hit a lot. Like, you know, when it comes to just owning property, comes to, you know, owning your own house, like that is where generational wealth, when you own a house, that's something that you could pass on to your kids, you know, and then your kids, and so to speak. So, you know, that's definitely not something you want to take lightly, or you just want to, you know, pass up on. If you definitely have the opportunity to own your own house, like it's not, don't think about just a bill that you have to pay every month, because if you're renting, you're gonna have to pay that, you know, amount anyway. So you might as well pay towards owning something, having equity, having assets, you know. And I think one thing that you brought up that really touched me was saying that when you said that you grew up in Brooklyn in an apartment, correct?
Yep.
And then now you live in Virginia out on 5 acres, you know, so having your son being able to play basketball outside, and you're telling me you have chickens in your backyard and things like that. So to me, like, could you explain, like, why did you choose, or like decisions that, you know, led you to owning that house, and why you chose like that?
I think the biggest thing for me was about owning land. I think land was a big piece of it. Coming from New York and coming from Brooklyn, you don't have very much land, so I thought that was just a unique opportunity. I think the other piece was about owning something. Again, I grew up in apartments, whether it be in East New York or in Brownsville, and you have people on top of one another. I never wanted my son to grow up that way. I also had a really similar experience recently where the home that my grandparents owned from the time that they moved from Nicaragua here in the 50s was sold by my father and by my aunts and uncles once they passed. Understood their decision making, and there were a lot of other factors that factored into that decision as well. But at the same time, to watch a piece of land that had been worked extremely hard for by my grandparents, you know, my granddad was a doorman at Rockefeller Center, my grandmother was a maid on the Upper East Side. To see people struggle in that regard, to own a home, to have that passed on generationally, and to see that lost, I think is a very hurtful thing. Everybody makes decisions based upon what they're going through at that time in their life. But again, it's such an important thing to consider the generational impact and how that impacts those downstream. At this point now, my family in New York, we no longer own property. That's a somewhat hurtful thing. I think the other thing that you look at, and the other piece that factors in, is we're from New York originally. This place is being gentrified, just like almost every major American city that we have here in America. And what you're finding are a number of brown people and people in inferior socioeconomic situations almost being forced out of their homes, whether it be through increased taxes or whether it's through opportunities for them to make money off of that home sale. I think we just end up missing the boat. I think we've seen that in the growth of downtown Brooklyn, where you've seen people sell their homes. Those property values have exponentially grown, whether it be through the expansion of the Barclays Center or other businesses that are now coming in that area. And Black people are now missing out on that opportunity. I think it's very, very important that older people, I'm not making myself older than you guys because that makes me feel a little bad. But it's very important that elders older than all of us share that information with the youth and make sure that we keep that focus. If not, I think we'll stay in the same economic position that we've been in this country for some time.
I just want to piggyback off that. I don't know if one of you guys said that to me yesterday, or maybe I was listening to something, but somebody said the United States is for sale. It is all land that's been bought and acquired through like Louisiana Purchase and other stuff we've been just doing, acquiring land, making trades with other countries, discovering it, quote unquote. But United States is for sale. So as people of color or people in general, we should be taking advantage of that and not just, renting or leasing or whatever, but we should, like you say, Fredy, buy some land and pass it down through generation to generation.
And the thing about it is, when you own something, you can do whatever you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy a house, you can knock it down if you want,
Mm-hmm.
and then rebuild it all over again. If you're paying rent, that point you can't do nothing. You barely can even poke a hole in the wall to hang a picture. You know what I mean? So having ownership to own your own stuff, it gives you a lot of freedom, is what I'm trying to say, to do whatever you want to do with whatever you own, whether it's a trademark or it's the house you live in or it's the car you drive. You know what I mean? It gives you the freedom of ownership to do whatever you want to do with it.
And that's real powerful. There's this one example I heard. I don't have all the full details in mind because I just thought of it, but essentially, I believe Beyonce, she was asked to pretty much do a show or do a concert or something, and say, for example, I think she was offered say like $10 million to do the concert. I think she denied it so she could get like $2 million to do like a video or like a documentary instead. Right? I don't have the full details, but then she chose to do like the video or documentary for less money instead of doing the concert for $10 million. Then what happened was that she was able to, I think, do a contract with Netflix so they could air that documentary. So then now she was making money. Once she got more money through the contract, and then like whenever someone streamed it or so, she was making money off of that. So she ended up passing on that $10 million to say I'm throwing out like $50 million. But I don't remember the exact numbers. But essentially, the moral of the story was that she took less money so she can own something. So then now she has the ability to use it to her advantage and make more money down the line instead of just taking the quick money right now and then boom, that's it. And I believe LeBron had a very similar story when he was in high school, where I think he was offered a bunch of money by like Reebok or something like that. If you know the full details, then definitely.
Yeah, I know a little bit. I know so many of these stories of people being offered short money and understanding that it's short money and then making the decisive decision to be a part of actual ownership. I believe that happened with the young man who played Simba in The Lion King. They offered him $2 million for the role. He took a fraction of the money for a portion of ownership on the back end. And whether that be the film or the play or the remake of the film, he's making assets decades later off of that individual singular decision that was really promoted by his parents as well. Again, it's very, very important that we kind of keep that focus in mind, that it's not about the short money. And especially some of us who, again, there's not this idea that all black and brown people are in an inferior socioeconomic position, because that's not the case.
Yeah.
But if you are in a short economic position, you still have to make the decisions that allow you to have actual ownership. I'm a huge podcast listener. It's part of the reason why I listen to your podcast.
Appreciate it.
And I've listened to the Joe Budden podcast, for instance, no free promo. But in regards to listening to that podcast, I watched them not make revenue off of that podcast for years. For years. That's a conscious decision. Now, I have no idea what their socioeconomic position is, but they were willing to make that decision to wait for an actual ownership opportunity within Spotify. Whatever that may be, I just think there's a certain amount of suffering that may have to occur in the short run for you to get to a place where you actually own something and pass it on. And again, make residual income further down the line.
Can I add something to that real quick? And it makes a lot of sense, because that is like, you can epitomize the music industry in a way. Like, you're an artist, you're about to blow up, right? And these labels, they come at you, and they offer you nothing that you actually will own. right? They say, okay, here's $10 million up front, but you don't own any of those music that's going to live on for years. You don't own any of that. They own all of that. And like I said, wise decision, short term, long term, you got to think about it. You know what I mean? Try to get some ownership for your stuff before you run into any contract or any labels. That goes out for musician, the young guys getting drafted, you know what I mean? Those young NFL players, football players, the NBA, whatever sport you do, try to get ownership for your stuff, like whatever you do, you know what I mean? Because it's going to help you in the long run when you can't ball no more, or you can't sing no more, you know what I mean?
I think from those earlier mistakes that are made, you bring up the music industry.
Yeah.
Because Sam Cooke's fighting for his master's in
There you
publishing in the
There
late
you
50s,
go.
early 60s.
There
And
you
you
go.
still have 5 generations of musicians who come after him who don't understand that process,
Make
who
the
still
same
to this
mistake.
day don't understand publishing.
Yeah.
We laughed, and I saw this in general in just the media. We laughed at LeVar Ball.
Yeah.
Now, granted, tactics completely over the top, maybe even unacceptable in certain instances. But how do we mock a guy for understanding and acknowledging the fact that people are buying sneakers because his child's name is on the side of it? People do not buy KDs because of Phil Knight and him owning Nike. They buy KDs because of Kevin Durant. They buy LeBrons because of LeBron. They buy Jordans because of Jordan.
Yep.
If you do not have an ownership stake in that, then you're being fleeced. And I don't care if you get $50 million,
Shortchanged.
but if the company's getting trillions of dollars or
You're
billions
being
of dollars,
shortchanged.
you're
Yeah.
being shortchanged. So the point when he says, no, I'm going to make my own shoe, whether it be an inferior shoe, again, or whatever the process may be, however we critique that, the concept and idea that we're going to make the majority of the revenue because people are coming here for us is important. And it's something that we all should support.
Yeah.
I think
I have one question for Fredy. Right before we segue into another topic, you sound very experienced with this, and I'm sure you are. I know you are. But what for our listeners, what is the importance of money? Like the time value of it. How important is it to keep that wealth? You know, you said the phrase generational wealth, of course. You know, and money, wealth isn't just paper and monetary, but focusing on the paper aspect, because I know a lot of our listeners, may not get the idea or the phrase that $1 today is worth less than $1 tomorrow. So could you expand on that real briefly if you can?
Sure. I think, so I would preface this by the fact that I don't think I'm wealthy. I do fine, but I think I've been around some wealth and I've been around real poverty. To me, money is nothing more than opportunity. It's the ability to do as you please. That's important, though, and I think we lose sight of the importance of that. It's not about just garnering money for yourself, but in a certain instance, it's about creating opportunities for those around you. If I do not have enough money to be able to take care of my family has to then struggle to figure that out. I may not be able to provide educational opportunities for my children. I may not be able to expose them to the other things in life they should be experiencing. True. That's what money provides. It's not power. I don't view it as anything other than that. Exactly. It's nothing more than a resource like fire and water or anything else that you have around you. But it does have its importance. And I think this idea, I support a number of liberal programs, a number of, even democratic socialist programs, whether that be in education, whether that be in medicine. Those are things that I support because I'd hate to see impoverished people not receive help. But at the same time, we have to have money. Yeah. We have to have money, and it does serve a purpose, and it's not an evil, awful thing that we should be running away from. Look at minority communities across the country. This is an economic issue. People commit crimes because they don't have money to put food on the table. Yeah. If I can't look towards someone who can provide an employment opportunity for me, someone who will hire me and trust me, then how am I supposed to provide for those around me? The idea is that hopefully you can have money for yourself, you can have money for your family, but then even thinking broader, for your community. The fact that you young guys, again, and I've spoken with all of you, the fact that you guys have an ownership stake in a business, whether it be a clothing company or a studio, you guys already understand that idea. In fact, down the line, again, someone will come to you. I've done employment opportunities and gone to career fairs. My only hope is that a kid looks at me and goes, I can go talk to that guy. I can have a conversation with him. I don't have to be fake about it, and he can help me figure out what we're supposed to be doing. I think that is really how I view money, and I hope that's how the younger generation views it as well.
Definitely.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you.
And when you talk about, talking to someone at a career fair, that's how I met you, at a career fair. So definitely, I really appreciate that. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll go into our word of the day. And then after that, we'll go into our next topic. All right. So Edom, do you have the word of the day for us, or quote of the day? I like saying word of the day. It sounds better.
Yes, I do.
All right. Let's hear it.
All right. And Freddie better guess this one.
All right.
It's really all about the money and the power. I just want to see my people empowered.
That sounds like a musician.
That's Joey Badass.
Yep.
What song is that, though?
Yeah, that's part 2.
Dang, that's hard.
That's a teamwork. I said musician. You know, it's time for you to guess the song, Freddie.
It's hard. I know it's off.
I don't know.
Is that America?
No, it's off the album.
It's off the. I don't know.
Give up. But we guess the song.
Yeah, we know the artist.
It's the song Temptation by Joey Badass.
Temptation by Joey Badass. Can you say the quote one more time?
It's all about the money and the power. I just want to see my people empowered.
Nah, definitely. I mean,
just to piggyback off that quote real quick, it's just exactly what you just said. Like, use it as a resource to empower your people, empower your family. You know what I mean? Empower you, get your child to school, or empower your community, somebody who's lesser than you. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Definitely.
Completely relatable to what he just said.
And shout out to Joey Badass. You're slacking because he hasn't got an album in a little while, and I need that album. But, that's a different topic for a different day. All right, so now...
Brooklyn born and raised too.
Yeah, Brooklyn born and raised.
Pro era,
exactly. So shout out to them all. They make great music. So now we'll segue into our second last topic. We'll see. Of the day, and that is the new rule for the NCAA. I've had this conversation with Fredy.
What does the rule say?
So essentially, the NCAA now allows students to profit from their likeness and their selling of their materials.
They basically, for the most part, can now profit off of themselves.
Wow.
And that, I think, is
like the sports
just a revolutionary thing. Yes. So if I'm a college athlete, I can sell a t-shirt. I can post that online. I can make money off of myself. Again, not having the university provide me with anything. No one else is providing me with anything. My ability in the good American way has generated revenue for me.
So that sounds all fine and dandy. But I don't know. For me personally, let's see. I think it's a good rule. It sounds nice. I'm interested on, do you think that's going to now affect about how they get scholarships? Because I think one issue or one talking point before was that a lot of these students, say it was football or basketball, for example, a lot of them are getting full ride scholarships. So they don't have to worry about tuition. They don't have to worry about books. And when you're on those sports teams, especially if you're a star athlete at one of these big schools, realistically, anything that you need in school is going to be provided. Okay. Right? So now I wonder if they're going to be, now you have someone like Zion Williamson, right? I'm sure he didn't have to pay $1 while he was in college. But now, if he can start making money, and he would have made stupid amounts of money, and now he can start making money off of his likeness, as a school, do I have to start now paying for, why am I going to give you a scholarship if I know that you're going to start making money off of yourself?
All right.
I think...
Go ahead, Edom. Go ahead. Because this is an exciting topic. I couldn't wait to take it back there. Go ahead, Edom.
Before the rule was passed, the one key term which stopped them from getting paid was the term amateurism, which says a student athlete participating in a sport should not be driven by, this is an abridged version, so they shouldn't be driven by monetary incentives. So they should be driven by the educational, emotional, social, anything other than money, the benefits of that. Because if they get paid like professional players, they're not considered amateurs. They're I don't know how that works exactly, but technically they're not considered amateurs.
Halfway there. But Like, my input on the situation is I'm for it. And this is why, right? Everybody wins. I'm going to tell you why I say that, right? For the school, they are going to get a cut of that, whatever jersey he's selling or whatever cleats he's selling, if he's a football player or whatever. They're going to get a cut off that. So that's revenue for them as well, right? And I think there should be an age limit on it, though. Like, say 18, 19, 20, as long as you're above 18, you are able to do that. You know what I mean? Maybe below 16, 17, you just left high school, going into college. You don't need that. You know what I mean? You need to focus more. But if you're 18, you can start a business, whether you're in college or not. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why can't you earn while you're doing what you love in college just the same? You're saying about the full ride. Like, some of them have full rides, right? But at the time when they earned the full ride, they weren't making any money. So I think it's fair. They were 16 and 15-year-olds at the time when they get called for these colleges and get full scholarships from high school, right? So from high school,
That's true.
So they weren't making any money. So it was the raw talent that got them there. And now they're old enough to make some money off it. Why not? And get an education while you're at it.
I think what the colleges did to kind of combat that a little bit is, instead of students getting paid, let's say like $500 a game or whatever, they get like other benefits such as like laptops, iPads, anything connected to their education. They got, that was a way of compensating the players. And I don't think personally colleges will stop paying for these players tuition or anything. I personally think they might cut back on such rewards like laptops or computers or whatever they give them. Because regardless, any sports team in college that wins in their conference, right? The school gets paid for that, and then they get paid. So let's take Duke for example. They won their conference, right? Duke got paid, and then for every round they advanced, under Zion and RJ's leadership and all those other players, the school got money for every single game they played and won. So regardless, the school isn't losing money per se. If anything, the student's the only one gaining, because on top of that, their coaches are lining their pockets, their school is lining their pockets, the NCAA, $1 billion industry, is lining their pockets using these players. There was like an NCAA game released, and they used players' images and all that, without their, I'd say, express consent.
Which goes back to ownership, their copyright ownership. Do you know that your face is copyright? That each time Jay-Z and Beyonce and each one of them go on the TV, they get money for that? Because you're using their face? Didn't know that, did you?
No.
I heard something like that.
Yeah.
Once, yeah. Because they understand. They get it.
I believe in it.
So I think, one, we're doing way too much Duke talk here. UVA won the national championship. You boys tighten up with your examples first. Number two, I think, I wholly support this change, man. I do. Again, I struggle with those who romanticize college and amateurism and all the things they grew up with. I love college sports. I love athletics in general. I've watched coaches go from making $1 million to a coach like Calipari pull down over $8 million a year. I now see coaches who make money off of sneaker endorsements, coaches who have their own shows, who have their own podcasts, and all make a fortune off of it.
Similar to the phrase amateurism, I guess.
It takes out the authenticity. I think that's what he was saying.
Yeah. He said it takes out like the love of the game. It's like I didn't get paid in college, or I wouldn't have wanted to get paid because I did it for the love of the game.
I think
so.
He's hating.
Do you think?
I just think he's hating. He's straight up hating, bro.
Well, no, but the thing, all right. I mean, we'll see. But I think, at least for me personally, what I witnessed and what I really enjoyed about college sports was that there is a difference in motivation, I think if you're playing for one to love the game and if you know that you're going to be getting money and getting contracts, I think that's one thing that's a common thought between the difference between college sports and for example, like say college sports and then professionalism, right? You know, when you know you're making millions of dollars off of your contract, you're going to play a little bit different. Like, oh, I'm getting paid millions anyway. Than when you're playing for school and it's like, oh, you're playing your heart out to make it to the league, right? So I think at least growing up, that's what I really loved about college sports, is because there was that motivation of like, I'm not getting paid anything. I'm paying so I could go make it. And that's what I really loved about college sports. And that's something that Tim Tebow also expressed. I get it. Some people have this argument that like, you know what I mean? Like, yo, when I go back home, my family is starving. I'm not going to sit here and rail on poverty. Obviously, your living condition, that's really unfortunate. But like, I think that me personally, I think that authenticity is what just makes college sports. I think that's what, you know, besides it just being people playing the sport, I think it's just the heart behind it and the reasoning behind it. You know what I mean? Am I for people, you know, students making money, you know, off themselves? Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and think that's a bad idea. But I think on the quote unquote moral side, I think it kind of just changes, you know, the motivation of it when like, all right, I'm playing to make money, or am I playing to, you know, because I love the sport?
I just wonder to a certain extent what distinguishes college sports that are predominantly played by African Americans. We don't have this conversation about tennis players. We don't have this conversation about golfers.
Pretty much.
We don't even speak about this. There are soccer players right now who get paid millions of dollars at 14, 15 to join clubs in Europe. We're fine with it. It doesn't bother us in the least. But somehow when we get to this space,
but wait,
and again, I'm not villainizing you individually in no way, shape, or form. I'm just saying in general, if you look at the discourse that we have, we've never had this conversation about Jennifer Capriati playing tennis. We never considered that or talked about it. We didn't care. Because in America, you have a right to make revenue where you can make revenue if you're doing so legally. I just don't understand why there's such a limitation in this one space. And again, it's surprising that it's in a space that generates the most revenue.
Good point.
This is the space that generates all of the money. Understand, Duke pays for girls' soccer and men's golf with basketball money, with football money. So I don't understand why we, again, work so hard. And I think the other argument is these kids aren't getting a piece of that pie. They're creating their own pie.
Exactly.
And again, I just struggle with that. You look at a kid like Zion, who is from rural South Carolina. Why should he have to remain in poverty a second longer than he has to? Not to say that he is in poverty, just saying based upon the area. A kid like LeBron James, if he does attend college, if they don't change that rule and he's not allowed to go directly to the league, he is staying in Akron housing projects for $17 a month. He has to stay there. While whether it be Ohio State or Duke or whatever college he goes to makes revenue off of his back, I just don't know how we as a society focus so much on how we view what they're doing and don't look at the actual impact on the individual. I just feel like the place that you're in with your family, what you're able to provide, again, this conversation about generational wealth, making money as early as you can, because in the American way, I should be able to make money as early as I would like. Again, I just don't understand, and maybe someone can explain that to me, what redefines that in this space for college basketball players, football players.
I see. I think
it kind of sounds like a new form of slavery, if you think about it, but, you know, like, not new form, but a form, in a sense. If, like you said, we're making money off his back, right? Off their labor, you know.
But it's not, no. It's not labor. It's not labor. It's a sport. Like, they're the ones who, you know, either if they got recruited or if they're the one, like, it's not like they're not benefiting at all. Like, these star players, like, they're set at school. You know what I mean? Yeah. When they get home, if they're from an unfortunate background, yeah, they may be like still, you know, maybe they're still struggling and things like that. But like, you know, if they didn't have a scholarship and they go home, they would still be poor. Or if they had an academic scholarship and they went home, they would still be poor when they go home. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, like, to me, like, that condition wouldn't have changed.
For me, it's pretty simple, bro. Like, if I earn it, give it to me. So if I earn that money, if I score 10 touchdowns or I score 15 3-pointers in one game or whatever, if I earned it and I can get it, give it to me. I want it. What I do with it, It's my business. What I do with it, my family, whatever, is my business. If I earn it, give it to me. That's all I gotta say. How would you feel? Because at the end of the day, bro, there are so many of these college athletes that work so hard, bro, and then at the end of it, they have a degree to show for it. Yeah, but then they still can't get a job. Or what if, say for example, that final season you break your leg and you can't go pro? You have $0 to show for that. All that work you put in college. You have nothing more than what? A sweatshirt, bro?
Yeah. And you really look at a space where you have college students who can't solely focus on academics. Going to college is difficult enough as it is. And I think to not define what they do as labor and hard work would almost be disingenuous to what they go through every day. You have college athletes who wake up before class in the morning, lift, go to practice, go to class, go to practice after.
Yep.
You know, you have guys literally who are playing the games that we watch on ESPN, and I've experienced this, and he's in my 8 o'clock class the next morning. That's nuts. And I think
That's my
that you're
girlfriend there, bro.
yeah, and to think you're solely compensated. Again, I'm not undermining education. I was very happy to go get a degree. I still pay for it. Like, that's important. But at the same time, to think that solely compensates for all that these student athletes are bringing to the table, all the wealth that they're generating, outside of the culture that they're contributing to their environment, I just think that's a really tough thing. And I'm very, very happy that the NCAA made this decision. It's largely based off of California, a liberal progressive state, making this decision, and states realizing, and the NCAA realizing, hey, let's hurry up and change this rule before all the great athletes go play in California so they can make some money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like I said, it goes back to ownership, because at the end of the day, like you said, they're making money off these students' apparels, right? Selling them inside the libraries and the school museums or whatever they call them. Sell these jerseys, right? If you're a good player. And like I said, ownership. That's my name on the back of the jersey. So if you're selling my name, why can't I get $1 for it? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was the one who made that number 8 jersey, the number 8 jersey that everybody wants to buy. Why can't I earn from it? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. Like you said, you get up in the morning. My girlfriend, she, for example, she was a student athlete. She ran track and cross. She ran cross country and 800 and 1500 meters, right? So she would get up in the morning and go to practice. She got a full ride scholarship, mind you. So she get up in the morning, go to practice, go to class, go to practice, go to class, and go to practice again. Literally for like 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, you have track meet that she got to go run her harder. And then she's finished right now. Yeah, she got a degree and she know a couple of people because she's a good networker. Right? But at the end of the day, she has nothing else. Like, that's it. A degree. Like, I know you go to college for a degree, but if you're going to give me, if I can get anything else out of that, give it to me. Especially if I work my ass off.
So now I'm interested in how does it work for people, right? I see how it benefits like star athletes. Now, how does it, benefit the person on the bench? Nothing, right? Nothing really changes.
Well, I think in the end, they're in the position that they always were in. They're still getting their financial compensation through their scholarship, through the support that they're receiving through the school. But again, there are gradations of skill. And that's just like the NBA. Everybody doesn't make what LeBron makes. Everybody doesn't make what KD makes. There's a guy making the minimum, and we don't cry for that guy because that's just the way the structure works.
He knows what he wants. He knows what he deserves.
Yeah. So I don't think that. Again, I can see where people would say maybe that builds dissension on a team. You have a football team, you had 3 stars, and they're making money. Completely understand that part, but that's just something that you end up dealing with because, again, we didn't have this issue when we had a team full of kids who were coming from lower or middle socioeconomic status who were playing for millionaire coaches. We never look at the coach and goes, man, he's making a lot of money. What's going on there? We don't worry about that. I don't see how an athlete would look at their quarterback and say, well, look at all the money he's making. Their coach is making money, their AD's making money, and everybody else who can profit is profiting.
All right. I think that's some pretty valid points. I don't know. I was just bringing up certain concerns and certain thoughts of mine, but I'm sure
your mind changing now, isn't it?
Listeners, judge him.
No, I think I was just bringing up some points that I thought. I think this is actually really beneficial for students. I'm not sitting here saying that college athletes shouldn't get paid. Like, that's not what I believe at all. Like, I know many college athletes, like you said, like Candace and just many other college athletes. Like, and like you said, if I earned it, I should be able to get it. So I'm not sitting out here saying that students shouldn't be getting paid. But I just think I think it's a very interesting rule. I do definitely want to do some more research on like why was this an issue in the first place? Like, what's the history behind of not being able to make money through the NCAA? I'm sure it probably just started off with like, it seemed nice, and then they just never felt like changing it. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that industry has been around for hundreds of years, probably over, depending on how long college sports has been around, which is hundreds probably. So. But thank you for, having that conversation. I'm sure our listeners learned a little something about that. So I think that kind of winds down this week's episode. Do we have any final remarks from our guests here regarding anything, ownership and this and this topic?
If I earned it, give it to me.
All right. Edom?
No, I'm good.
All right.
No, thank you guys for having me. And again, man, just very, very impressive that guys your age, as young as you guys are considering ownership, thinking about that, understanding the impact on yourselves, your families, your community, and hopefully that word spreads, man. That message gets out there.
Definitely. So thank you for being on the show. And like we discussed was, ownership is very important, whether it's your own business or just your clothing line, real estate. Real estate is probably one of the most important forms of ownership that you can definitely get yourself into. You don't have to be a real estate agent. Anybody can own a house. Anybody can do that. There are a bunch of different podcasts, videos, seminars, anything to, so you can learn more about how to own a home and educate yourself on how to own a home. So hopefully one day we can have probably like a professional realtor or someone on here. We did have our friend Sebas speak about mortgage loans a few episodes ago. So we're definitely trying to get more content like that out, because I know I'm definitely interested in owning my own home as soon as I can. That's not something that I think that people should put on a pedestal, like, I have to wait till I'm 35. Like, no, they're very young people, like early 20s. All you need, is a few $1,000s, for just a quick loan, and then you'll be paying rent somewhere anyway, so you might as well pay towards the mortgage and own it. You know what I mean? So that's something that we'll definitely look forward to finding people. So if any of the listeners have any suggestions or know anybody who could benefit and talk about that on the podcast, definitely reach out to us on our Instagram at everybody_eats podcast. Reach out to us with any suggestions. If you have any topics that you're interested in for us to talk about, definitely reach out to us with that. And definitely we just look forward to teaching while we learn and learning while we teach. And that's everybody eats for us, giving some food for thought and cooking up some ideas. So thanks for rocking with us. Make sure that you're following us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're on there. Thank you again, Fredy Mullins, for being on the show. Corey Ormsby, Edom Ekpe. It's your boy Ben Stabella's there. Peace.